In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. You've heard that phrase 1,000 times if you're a fan of Warhammer 40,000. But have you ever stopped to consider what it truly means? Not just the war itself, but what happens to those caught in its relentless, grinding machinery. Because in the 41st millennium, death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. In fact, death is often a mercy, a quick escape from horrors that would shatter the sanity of any rational mind. The universe of Warhammer 40k is built upon a foundation of suffering. It's a setting where hope is not just scarce, but actively punished, where kindness is weakness, and where the very act of existing often demands a price too terrible to comprehend. The Imperium of man spans 1,000,000 worlds, housing trillions upon trillions of souls, and for the vast majority of them, life is brutal, short, and meaningless. But even among this ocean of misery, there are fates that stand apart, torments so profound that they make the average Imperial citizen's existence seem almost bearable by comparison. Today, we're going to explore these fates. Not the clean death of a lasgun blast or the quick end of a chainsword. No, we're diving into the truly horrific destinies that await those unfortunate enough to draw the attention of the galaxy's most malevolent forces. These are the fates where consciousness persists long after it should have ended, where the body becomes a prison, and where the soul itself becomes currency for powers beyond mortal comprehension. We'll walk through the torture laboratories of the Drukhari, where pain is harvested like wheat and suffering is refined into an art form. We'll witness the cold efficiency of the Adeptus Mechanicus as they strip away humanity itself, leaving only mindless servitors in their wake. We'll explore the mutations that twist chaos worshippers into mindless spawn, their very identity dissolved in a tide of uncontrolled change. We'll examine the punishments of the ecclesiarchy, where heretics are transformed into living weapons driven by agony and holy rage. We'll peer into the vessels where demons wage eternal war against the souls of their unwilling hosts. And we'll stand at the edge of Tyranid digestion pools, where entire worlds are rendered down into component molecules, every living thing absorbed into the endless hunger of the hive mind. These are not stories of heroism or glory. There are no space marines coming to save these souls, no last-minute rescues or triumphant victories. These are the stories that get whispered in the darkest corners of hive cities, the fates that inquisitors use to threaten even the most hardened criminals into cooperation. They are the nightmares that haunt even those who serve the Emperor faithfully, because in this universe, loyalty is no shield against horror. The question isn't whether these fates exist. They do, documented in countless imperial records, witnessed by inquisitors and their acolytes, recorded in the testimonies of those rare few who somehow survived encounters with forces that should have destroyed them utterly. The question is, which is worst? Is it better to lose your mind entirely, or to remain conscious as your body is used for purposes you would never consent to? Is it worse to be devoured slowly or transformed completely, to be a tool of enemies or a weapon of allies? There are no good answers in the 41st millennium, only variations of horror. And yet, these fates continue, day after day, world after world, as the great wheel of war grinds on. For every space marine that dies gloriously in battle, 10,000 souls suffer fates that make death look like salvation. For every planet saved by the Imperium's might, another falls to horrors that consume not just life, but the very hope of mercy. So as we explore these nightmarish destinies, remember that in Warhammer 40k's universe, this isn't just fiction or exaggeration. This is Tuesday. This is the expected outcome. This is what it means when we say there is only war, because war in this setting doesn't end with death. It continues beyond it, finding ways to extract suffering from souls long after their bodies should have given out. Welcome to the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000, where the only thing more terrifying than the monsters that lurk in the darkness is what they'll do to you if they catch you. Where the greatest horror isn't what kills you,
but what keeps you alive. And where the old saying holds true, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. Captured by the Drukhari. Of all the fates we'll discuss today, being captured by the Drukhari, also known as the Dark Eldar, is consistently ranked by those unfortunate enough to know of them as among the absolute worst destinies imaginable. And unlike some of the other horrors we'll explore, this isn't a quick transformation or a slow decay into madness. No, the Drukhari keep you alive, conscious, and aware for every single moment of your torment, because that's precisely the point. To understand why capture by the Drukhari is so horrific, we need to understand what they are and why they do what they do. The Drukhari are the twisted remnants of the ancient Aeldari Empire, survivors of a fall so catastrophic it birthed a chaos god. When the Aeldari civilization reached its decadent peak, their excesses and depravities were so profound that they tore a hole in reality itself, creating Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, the chaos god of excess and sensation. This psychic cataclysm known as the Fall murdered billions of Aeldari in an instant, their souls devoured by the newborn deity. But some survived. Those who fled into the webway, an ancient network of extra-dimensional tunnels, found themselves protected from Slaanesh's birth scream. They established the dark city of Commorragh, a sprawling metropolis, hidden in the spaces between reality, where the laws of physics bend to impossible architecture, and where time itself flows strangely. Here, the survivors could have rebuilt, could have learned from their civilization's mistakes. Instead, they doubled down on their depravity, because they discovered something terrible. Slaanesh still hungered for their souls. Every Drukhari soul is marked for consumption by Slaanesh. From the moment of their birth, the Dark Prince slowly, inexorably drains their life force, a process called the thirst. Without intervention, a Drukhari would age and wither rapidly, their soul consumed piece by piece until nothing remained. But they found a way to stave off this fate, a method as brilliant as it is monstrous. They discovered that by inflicting pain and suffering on others, by drinking in the psychic resonance of torment, they could replenish what Slaanesh was stealing. The agony of their victims serves as a kind of spiritual sustenance, feeding them and keeping death at bay. This isn't a metaphor or spiritual concept. The Drukhari literally feed on pain. When they torture someone, when they cause suffering, they absorb the psychic energy released by that anguish. The more creative the torture, the more profound the suffering, the more nourishment they receive, and they have had 10,000 years to perfect their craft. When you're captured by the Drukhari, you become food, but not in any conventional sense. Your body is food, yes, but more importantly, your capacity to feel pain, your ability to experience fear and despair and agony, that's what truly sustains them. And because of this, they've developed technologies and techniques that ensure you remain conscious and aware through torments that would normally cause the brain to shut down. The process typically begins with a raid. Drukhari strike forces emerge from hidden webway portals, moving with impossible speed on their anti-gravity skimmers. They favor targets that can't effectively fight back: civilians, isolated outposts, poorly defended worlds. They're not looking for military glory or conquest. They're shopping for livestock. Their weapons are designed not to kill, but to incapacitate, to cause agony without death. Splinter weapons that fill the bloodstream with crystallized toxins that cause every nerve ending to scream. Agonizers that stimulate pain receptors directly, making the victim feel as if their skin is being flayed off, even though no physical damage is being done. If you're taken alive, and many are, you're bound and dragged back through the webway to Commorragh. The journey itself is a preview of what awaits. The Drukhari don't waste opportunities to feed, and the terror you experience as you're transported to an alien dimension, city, serves as an appetizer for them. You're conscious throughout, aware that you're being taken somewhere that makes imperial torture chambers look like holiday resorts. Commorragh itself is a nightmare-made architecture. The city sprawls across impossibly vast dimensions, its towers piercing into darkness that has never known a sun. The streets are lit by captured stars, dimmed and tortured for the Drukhari's amusement. The air itself tastes of fear, because so much of it has been exhaled there. And everywhere, you see the evidence of what the Drukhari do to their captives. Your ultimate fate depends on which faction of Drukhari society claims you. If a cabal purchases you, you might end up as a gladiatorial slave, forced to fight in their arenas for the entertainment of crowds that feed on your terror. The witch cults, warrior groups who worship combat as the ultimate expression of perfection, conduct their bloody spectacles in vast amphitheaters where captives are pitted against each other, or against Drukhari warriors in matches that never end in victory for the slaves, only varying degrees of defeat. You might last seconds or hours, but the outcome is always the same, and if you somehow survive, they'll patch you up and throw you back in again and again until you finally break. But if you're claimed by the homunculi, the master torturers of Dark Eldar society, your fate becomes exponentially worse. These ancient beings are obsessed with the manipulation of flesh and the science of suffering. They've had millennia to study pain in all its forms, to understand exactly how to inflict maximum agony without allowing death to provide escape. Their laboratories are places where biology becomes abstract art, where the body is a canvas and suffering is the paint. The homunculi can do things to flesh that defy description. They can stretch your nerve endings to impossible lengths, making every inch of your skin a receptor for agony. They can replace your organs with synthetic ones designed to process pain more efficiently, ensuring you feel every torment with crystal clarity. They can remove your vocal cords so your screams don't bore them, or they can amplify them, using your cries as a symphony to accompany their work. They can keep you conscious through procedures that would drive most beings permanently insane, using their technologies to prevent your mind from fleeing into the mercy of madness. One of their favorite techniques involves leaving fragments of consciousness intact, even as they modify and change you. You might be turned into one of their grotesques, a massive combat construct made from the tortured flesh of multiple victims, and somewhere in that mass of muscle and rage, a piece of you remains aware, trapped and screaming silently, as your body is used for violence you would never willingly commit. Or they might transform you into a component of a pain engine, biomechanical constructs that feed on suffering, where your nervous system becomes part of the machine itself, experiencing every moment of the engine's operation as personal torment. The Talos pain engine is particularly nightmarish. These floating constructs are covered in blades, claws, and surgical implements, and hidden within their chassis are the remains of victims whose nervous systems have been hardwired into the machine. When a Talos attacks, slicing and stabbing its enemies, the consciousness within experiences the sensations as if it were being cut and stabbed over and over, forever. It's forced to participate in the violence, to be both weapon and victim simultaneously. The Chronos parasite engine is even worse, if such a thing is possible. This device is designed to drain the life force and very souls from its victims, and it does so slowly, agonizingly. As it approaches you, you feel your youth and vitality being pulled away. Watch your hands age and wither. Feel your organs begin to fail. But the process is controlled, drawn out for maximum suffering, and the entire time, the consciousness bound within the engine experiences the inverse, gorging itself on your life force in a way that should be ecstasy, but is experienced only as an endless, gnawing hunger that can never be satisfied. And this can go on for years, decades, centuries even. The Drukhari have mastered the art of keeping victims alive far beyond their natural lifespans. They can regrow flesh that's been flayed away, can restart hearts that have stopped, can repair organs that have failed, all to ensure the suffering continues. There are captives in the depths of Commorragh who have been there for longer than some imperial worlds have existed, kept in states of perpetual agony that never ends, never lessens, never offers even a moment's respite. Some victims are used in the witch cult gladiatorial games, where they're forced to fight for the entertainment of crowds that literally feed on their fear. The witches themselves are master combatants who've perfected the art of inflicting wounds that maximize pain while minimizing immediate lethality. They might cut you 1,000 times in a single duel, each slice calculated to sever specific nerves, each stab placed to cause maximum agony. And if you somehow win, if you manage to survive or even defeat your opponent, it doesn't matter. There's always another match, another opponent, another opportunity for the crowd to feed on your suffering. The mandrakes, shadow-dwelling creatures that serve the Drukhari, have their own special methods. They exist partially in the webway's shadow realm and partially in real space, and they can pull victims between these states of being. Imagine having your soul partially yanked out of your body while you remain conscious, existing in two places simultaneously, neither fully alive nor dead, experiencing the agony of being torn between dimensions. They wear cloaks made from the flayed skin of those who've broken agreements with them, and those skins retain some horrible semblance of awareness, experiencing every moment of their degradation. And through all of this, the worst part is the knowledge that there is no rescue coming. The Imperium has strict protocols for dealing with worlds raided by the Drukhari, if it even learns of such raids at all. The Dark Eldar strike fast and vanish before meaningful response can be organized, slipping back into the webway and sealing the portals behind them. And even if the Imperium could find Commorragh, even if they could navigate the webway to reach it, the Dark City is a labyrinth of impossible architecture, defended by forces that have spent millennia perfecting the art of war. No one is coming to save you. You might hope for death, pray for it even, but death is the one mercy the Drukhari absolutely will not grant. You are too valuable, too useful. Your suffering sustains them, keeps them alive, staves off the hunger of Slaanesh for another day. As long as you can feel pain, as long as your consciousness persists, you will be kept alive. The Daemonculaba see death as a failure of their art, a sign that they pushed too far or not carefully enough. They take pride in maintaining their subjects indefinitely. There are stories of rescue, rare tales of inquisitors or space marines recovering captives from Drukhari raids, but what they find is often worse than discovering corpses. The survivors are so traumatized, so fundamentally broken by what they've experienced, that death would have been kinder. Many beg for execution rather than face the memories of what was done to them. Some have been so extensively modified by Daemonculaba that they're no longer entirely human, their bodies twisted into forms that barely qualify as humanoid. And all of them know, with absolute certainty, that the Drukhari might come back for them. Because to the Dark Eldar, escaped captives are merely temporarily misplaced property. This is why, when Imperial forces encounter the Drukhari on raids, they often choose death in battle over capture. Commissars have standing orders to execute anyone who might be taken alive, rather than let them fall into Dark Eldar hands. It's considered a mercy, a final kindness to spare them from the fate that awaits in Commorragh. And in the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, that tells you everything you need to know about how terrible that fate truly is. The horror of servitor conversion. If the Drukhari represent the suffering inflicted by enemies of mankind, the process of servitor conversion represents something perhaps even more disturbing: the horror perpetrated by humanity itself, by the very Imperium that claims to protect its citizens. Because in the name of efficiency, technological necessity, and punishment for crimes, the Adeptus Mechanicus transforms living, thinking human beings into lobotomized cyborgs, capable of nothing but executing simple, repetitive tasks for the rest of their lives. Servitors are everywhere in the Imperium. They're so common that most citizens barely notice them. These shuffling, blank-faced figures that operate machinery, perform maintenance, carry heavy loads, or stand guard with weapons grafted to their arms. They're treated like tools, like equipment, because that's essentially what they are. But each servitor was once a person. Each one had thoughts, dreams, fears, and hopes. And then, through the brutal process of servitorization, all of that was taken away. The Imperium needs servitors because of one of its most fundamental laws, the prohibition against artificial intelligence. During the Age of Strife, humanity's reliance on AI nearly destroyed the species when the Men of Iron, advanced artificial intelligences, turned against their creators in a devastating war. The scars of that conflict run deep in Imperial culture, and the creation of true AI is considered one of the highest heresies, punishable by death. But the Imperium still needs automated workers, still requires something to operate the countless machines that keep human civilization functioning across 1 million worlds. The solution the Adeptus Mechanicus devised was as practical as it was horrific. If you can't use artificial intelligence, use artificial stupidity instead. Take a human brain, remove everything that makes it truly human, the capacity for thought, creativity, emotion, and self-awareness, and reprogram what's left to perform specific tasks. Wire it into cybernetic systems, replace limbs with tools or weapons, and you have a servitor, a biological computer that circumvents the prohibition on AI while providing the necessary automation. There are two primary sources for servitor creation. The first, and somehow less disturbing, is vat-grown clones. These are humans grown specifically for servitorization, never knowing true consciousness before the lobotomization process. They're created in massive biotanks on Forge worlds and elsewhere. Their development accelerated so they reach physical maturity in a fraction of normal human gestation time. These clones never have the chance to be truly human, never develop personalities or form memories. They go from the tank to the operating table to their assigned function with nothing in between. But vat-grown servitors are expensive and time-consuming to produce. It's far more efficient to use existing humans, and this is where the true horror begins. Because the Imperium has a ready supply of human raw material in the form of criminals. Murderers, heretics, thieves, those who've offended the Mechanicus in some way, they're all candidates for servitorization. The sentence is called servitude in perpetuis, perpetual servitude, and it's considered more merciful than execution, because at least you continue to serve the Imperium. At least your existence still has purpose. The process of servitor conversion is not quick or painless. The Mechanicus doesn't waste anesthesia on those sentenced to this fate. You're taken to a conversion facility, strapped down to an operating table in a sterile room where tech priests work with cold efficiency. They begin by mapping your brain, identifying which areas control the basic functions they need to preserve and which contain everything that makes you an individual person. Then they start cutting. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, planning, and personality, is systematically destroyed or removed. The areas responsible for emotion, for creativity, for self-awareness, these are burned out with precision instruments. They leave just enough brain function to operate your body, to process basic sensory input, to follow simple commands. It's a delicate operation because they need to preserve motor functions, speech capability for some servitor types, and the ability to interface with cybernetic systems. But everything else is discarded as unnecessary. Throughout this process, you remain conscious. The Mechanicus has found that maintaining consciousness during the initial stages of conversion makes the final lobotomization more effective, ensuring complete compliance in the finished product. You feel every cut, every burned-out synapse, every moment as pieces of yourself are systematically removed. You feel your thoughts becoming simpler, your emotions dampening, your sense of self dissolving. And you know, with whatever remains of your awareness, that this is permanent, that there's no coming back from this. Once the brain modification is complete, the physical augmentation begins. Your limbs might be removed and replaced with tools, hydraulic lifts, cutting implements, welding torches, weapons. Your eyes might be gouged out and replaced with optical sensors better suited to your assigned function. Your vocal cords might be removed entirely or modified to produce only the simple responses your function requires. A mind impulse unit is installed, connecting directly to your brain and allowing handlers to give you commands that you cannot refuse to obey. The finished product is a servitor, a being that looks humanoid, but has been stripped of everything that made it human. Servitors don't think, they execute programmed responses. They don't feel emotions. They register only the most basic sensory input necessary for their function. They don't have desires or fears or hopes. They simply exist, performing their assigned tasks until their biological components wear out and they're recycled for spare parts. But here's the truly horrifying part. Sometimes, fragments of consciousness remain. The lobotomization process, for all the Mechanicus's technological advancement, isn't perfect. Sometimes a scrap of awareness persists, trapped inside what's become a biological prison. Imagine being locked inside your own head, unable to control your body, unable to communicate, forced to watch through eyes you can't direct as your body performs tasks you never chose. You can't scream, can't cry, can't do anything but endure as your existence stretches on and on. There are documented cases of servitors showing signs of retained awareness, moments where something flickers behind those blank eyes, where they hesitate before executing a command, or make movements that aren't part of their programming. When this happens, when a servitor shows signs of consciousness, it's considered a malfunction. The servitor is returned to the Mechanicus for correction, which typically means additional brain surgery to remove whatever fragment of awareness survived the initial process. The person that's still in there, that tiny spark of consciousness clinging desperately to existence, is snuffed out completely. Different types of servitors are created for different functions, and each type has its own particular horror. Gun servitors, used as automated defense systems, have heavy weapons grafted to their bodies. They stand in one spot for years, perhaps decades, doing nothing but scanning for threats and firing when authorized. If any awareness remains, it experiences this existence of eternal vigilance, of being a weapon waiting to be fired, of having no purpose beyond violence you can't control. Hazardous duty servitors are perhaps the most tragic. These are sent into environments too dangerous for normal humans, highly radioactive areas, toxic atmospheric conditions, places where death is measured in seconds. They shuffle forward on their assigned tasks, their bodies absorbing lethal doses of radiation or poison, dying slowly as they complete whatever maintenance or construction they were programmed to perform. If any consciousness remains, it experiences the slow, agonizing death of cellular breakdown, feeling tissues fail and organs shut down, unable to flee or even express the pain. There's a particularly grim duty known as the coffin detail that uses servitors and prison laborers. These individuals must change the highly radioactive fuel cells of certain types of starships. The fuel cells are contained in coffin-shaped containers that emit lethal doses of radiation within seconds of exposure. The servitors or prisoners must physically carry these containers across large distances, knowing that they're receiving fatal doses with every step. The procession is slow, the distance substantial, and it's common for multiple carriers to literally melt into puddles of irradiated sludge before the task is complete. New servitors or prisoners are continuously sent to replace those who fall until the job is finished. Space Marine chapters also use servitors, but theirs are often created from failed initiates, young men who underwent the transformation process to become Astartes, but whose bodies rejected the gene seed. Rather than waste the genetic potential entirely, these failed candidates are converted into servitors that serve the chapter's needs. Imagine being a young man who dreamed of becoming one of humanity's finest warriors, who endured agonizing procedures to achieve that dream, only to fail at the last moment and have your punishment be conversion into a mindless drone serving the very brothers you hoped to fight alongside. The Mechanicus doesn't limit servitor creation to humans either. On some worlds, they've experimented with using other species or even creating specialized servitors from different source material. Ogryns, the large, simple-minded abhuman variant of humanity, sometimes become Praetorian servitors, massive combat servitors with even less intelligence than typical varieties, but immense strength. These hulking constructs guard Mechanicus temples and tech priests, their original simple minds completely overwritten with basic guard and attack protocols. Perhaps most disturbing are the stories of individuals who were unjustly convicted, who were sentenced to servitorization for crimes they didn't commit, or for offenses so minor that the punishment vastly exceeded the crime. Imperial justice is not known for its fairness or careful deliberation. Bureaucratic errors, mistaken identities, and malicious accusations can all result in servitorization. Somewhere in the Imperium, right now, there's probably a servitor who was once an innocent person, punished for a crime they never committed, their life and identity stripped away because some scribe filled out the wrong form or some official needed to meet their quota of conversions. The servitor's existence doesn't end with their usefulness either. When a servitor's biological components begin to fail, when age or damage or simple wear and tear makes them less effective at their function, they're not retired or given any form of rest. They're taken apart. Useful components, cybernetic implants, mechanical parts, these are salvaged and reused. The remaining biological matter is typically recycled as nutrient paste or disposed of as waste. There's no dignity in death for a servitor, no funeral or remembrance. They're disassembled like the machines they've become. And throughout the Imperium, this is considered normal, even merciful. Servitorization is held up as proof that even the worst criminals can still serve humanity, can still have purpose. Tech priests recite prayers as they perform conversions, believing they're doing holy work, transforming sinful flesh into servants of the machine god. Citizens who see servitors shuffling about their daily tasks rarely give them a second thought, any more than they'd contemplate the feelings of a data slate or a servo skull. But if you look closely, sometimes you can see hints of what was lost. An older servitor might have scars that suggest a life before conversion, a tattoo that remains visible despite all the modifications, or a facial structure that hints at what emotion they might once have shown. These remnants are evidence of the person who no longer exists, a ghost haunting the machine they've become. And somewhere, in the depths of some forge world or on some distant station, there are servitors that have been functioning for centuries. Their biological components have been replaced and repaired so many times that almost nothing of their original body remains, but they continue their tasks, eternal slaves to programming they can neither understand nor question. If any spark of awareness remains in these ancient servitors, they've experienced lifetimes of servitude, centuries of performing the same meaningless tasks over and over, with no hope of rest or release. This is the Imperium's efficiency. This is what it means when we say humanity is the cruelest and most bloodthirsty species in the galaxy, because we don't just kill our criminals or even our innocent, we erase them. We transform them into tools, and we call it justice. And every day, somewhere in the Imperium, another person is strapped to a conversion table, about to experience the process of having their humanity surgically removed, piece by piece, until nothing remains but a biological machine that will serve until it breaks. Devolving into a chaos spawn, the servants of chaos seek many things: power, immortality, the favor of the dark gods, and the ultimate prize of ascension to demonhood. But for every champion who achieves that dark apotheosis, who transforms into a demon prince and gains immortality and power beyond mortal comprehension, Thousands upon thousands more face a fate exponentially worse. Devolution into a chaos spawn, a mindless, ever-mutating abomination that exists only to serve as a warning of what happens when the ruinous powers give too much, too fast, or to those who prove unworthy of their gifts. To understand the true horror of becoming a chaos spawn, you need to understand how chaos corruption works. When a mortal pledges themselves to the chaos gods, or even when they're simply exposed to sufficient warp energy, they begin to accumulate mutations. At first, these changes might seem like gifts. A corn worshipper grows stronger, their muscles bulging with unnatural power. A follower of Tzeentch finds their mind sharpening, perceiving patterns and possibilities invisible to others. Those devoted to Nurgle feel their bodies becoming more resilient, capable of surviving wounds that would kill normal men. Slaanesh's servants experience sensations with heightened intensity, every moment becoming more vivid. These initial mutations are manageable, even desirable from the Chaos Worshipper's perspective. They mark you as chosen, as someone the Dark Gods have noticed and blessed. But here's the problem. The Chaos Gods are not benevolent, not even to their own followers. They're not careful. They don't measure out their blessings in proportions that mortal flesh can handle. And mutations, once started, rarely stop. The champion continues to serve, continues to gain the attention of their patron god, continues to receive gifts. Another eye grows on their forehead, granting them supernatural perception. Their arm transforms into a crab-like claw capable of crushing ceramite. Horns sprout from their skull. Their skin hardens into scales or plates. Their voice gains unnatural resonance that instills fear in enemies. Each change is significant. Each one pushes them further from their original form, but they're still in control, still themselves. They're mutated, yes, but they're still a person, still capable of thought and decision and identity. But there's a threshold, a point where the human body and mind can't accommodate any more changes without breaking. And when a Chaos Worshipper crosses that line, when they receive just one mutation too many, or when the Chaos Gods decide they've proven unworthy of further advancement, the transformation accelerates beyond control. The mutations don't stop or slow down. They multiply, compounding on each other, changing so rapidly that the champion's body becomes a churning mass of transformation. And their mind, unable to process or cope with what's happening, simply shatters. This is the birth of a chaos spawn, a being that was once human, once had ambitions and personality and identity, now reduced to a gibbering mass of meat and madness, perpetually mutating, forever changing, never stable, never coherent, never again truly conscious in any meaningful way. The physical transformation is obscene. The spawn's body becomes a grotesque parody of life itself, a fusion of biological impossibilities. Tentacles burst from where arms used to be. Eyes open and close randomly across what might once have been a torso. Mouths appear on surfaces that should have no mouths, screaming or laughing or making sounds that no human throat should produce. The thing might have multiple heads, or no head at all, or something that's constantly shifting between forms too quickly for the eye to follow. Some spawns are massive, swollen to enormous size by uncontrolled growth, their bodies expanding until they can barely move, yet still driven by instincts to attack and destroy. Others remain relatively small, but become dense with mutation, every inch of their form covered in spines, claws, tentacles, teeth, or stranger appendages. There's no standard form for a chaos spawn, because there's no pattern or purpose to their mutations. They're simply change incarnate, biological chaos made flesh. The spawn's skeletal structure might collapse and reform multiple times, bones breaking and regrowing in new configurations. Their organs multiply, migrate to wrong locations, or disappear entirely, yet somehow they continue to live, sustained not by biological function, but by the warp energies that suffuse them. They might have wings that can't lift their body weight, or claws that grow so large they can't use them effectively, or sensory organs that perceive dimensions of reality the spawn's mind can't process. And through all of this, fragments of the original person might remain, not enough to restore their identity or consciousness, but enough to experience the horror of their transformation. There might be moments of lucidity, split seconds where some remnant of who they were surfaces, looks out through inhuman eyes at what they've become, and experiences absolute, soul-destroying despair before the madness crashes back down. These moments are perhaps the only mercy of becoming a spawn. They're rare and brief, because sustained awareness would mean experiencing every moment of the spawn's existence as an unending nightmare. The spawn's mind has been shattered beyond any hope of repair. It can't think in the way humans think, can't plan or reason, or even form coherent thoughts. Instead, it operates on instinct and compulsion, driven by base urges that it can barely understand. The primary instinct is aggression, a need to attack and destroy anything that moves. Chaos. Spawns are weapons, tools created by the dark gods' overindulgence, and they serve that purpose by hurling themselves at enemies with mindless ferocity. When a champion degrades into a spawn, their former comrades typically have two options. They can abandon it, leaving the spawn to wander and eventually die, or they can keep it as a pet or beast of war, herding it into battle like a rabid animal. The Chaos warbands that choose the latter option use spawns as shock troops, pointing them at enemy lines and letting them loose. The spawns charge forward, driven by rage and pain and instincts they can't understand, tearing into anything in their path until they're destroyed, or until they run out of targets and wander off in search of more violence. There are different varieties of spawn depending on which Chaos god claimed the champion before their devolution. Cornate spawns are typically more physically powerful, their mutations focused on weapons and armor, their aggression even more pronounced, their rage incarnate, attacking with such ferocity that they'll continue fighting even after sustaining wounds that should kill them. Tzeentchian spawns are more esoteric, their forms constantly shifting and changing, sometimes generating brief bursts of warp energy or minor psychic phenomena. They're unpredictable, their mutations following no pattern, their attacks incorporating elements that defy physical laws. Nurglite spawns are perhaps the most disgusting, their bodies rotting even as they continue to function, covered in diseases and parasites, trailing flies and leaving pools of infectious filth wherever they go. They're resilient beyond measure, their diseased flesh refusing to die, their mutated organs continuing to pump, even when reduced to little more than putrid sludge. Slaaneshi spawns are disturbing in different ways, their forms incorporating elements of twisted beauty alongside grotesquerie, their movements sometimes possessing an obscene grace, their mutations including sensory organs that serve no purpose except to experience pain and pleasure in ways no sane being should. The fate of a Chaos spawn rarely ends in peace. Most die in battle, torn apart by enemy fire or blade. Some starve when their mutated bodies' demands exceed what they can consume. Others simply collapse when their biological systems finally fail under the strain of constant mutation. But some spawns persist for decades or even longer, wandering the wastelands where chaos holds sway, attacking anything that crosses their path, unable to die and unable to truly live. There are legends of individuals who encountered spawns and recognized something familiar in their behavior, a gesture or vocalization that suggested the spawn was once someone they knew. These stories never end well. The spawn can't be saved, can't be restored or redeemed. The person they were is gone, dissolved in the mutations that consumed them, and mercy is the only gift that can be offered. For Chaos champions, the threat of spawndom hangs over every achievement like a sword. The more successful they become, the more attention they draw from their patron god, the more gifts they receive, and the closer they edge toward that threshold where one more blessing becomes a curse. They walk a knife's edge, trying to gain enough power to achieve demonhood while not accumulating so many mutations that they degrade into spawn. Many try to control their mutations, to refuse certain gifts, or to carefully meter their exposure to warp energy. But the Chaos Gods don't ask permission before blessing their followers. The changes come whether wanted or not. And here's the truly cruel irony. Becoming a Chaos spawn doesn't mean your service to Chaos ends. You're still a tool, still a weapon, still capable of violence. You're just no longer capable of being anything more. The ambitions that drove you to serve the dark gods, the dreams of power and immortality, all of that is stripped away, leaving only a mindless beast that serves by attacking whatever its handlers point it toward. You traded your humanity for power, and received power in a form that destroyed your ability to use it meaningfully. In a way, spawndom is the dark gods' ultimate joke on their followers. They promise glory, power, ascension, and for some they deliver. But for the vast majority, they deliver transformation into something that can't even appreciate what it's become, can't even understand that it was once something more. The spawn exists in a state beyond suffering, beyond despair, beyond any emotion except rage and hunger and pain, and it will continue to exist in that state until something finally destroys it. And even then, there's no peace, because its twisted soul typically gets absorbed back into the warp, its essence consumed by the very gods it sought to serve. This is what awaits those who seek power from chaos, without the strength to control it, without the favor to achieve true ascension. This is the punishment for failure, for unworthiness, for simply being unlucky. And in the 41st millennium, where chaos cults proliferate across thousands of worlds, where the desperate and the angry and the ambitious turn to dark gods for answers the Imperium won't provide, new spawns are being created every day. Somewhere, right now, a champion is receiving that final gift, feeling their mind begin to unravel, experiencing the first moments of a transformation they can't stop and won't survive with their identity intact. And soon, there will be one more mindless horror loose in the galaxy, one more chaos spawn, serving as a warning that the dark god's gifts are never truly free. The living nightmare of Arco-Flagellation. While the Drukhari represent external threats and chaos, Spawn shows the dangers of seeking power from the ruinous powers. Arco-Flagellation represents something distinctly more insidious, a punishment administered by the Imperium itself, by the very institutions that claim to offer redemption and salvation. It's a fate that combines the most brutal aspects of lobotomization, combat stimulants, and religious zealotry into a package that turns the condemned into living weapons, whose entire existence becomes an extended agony that ends only in death. The sentence of Arco-Flagellation is delivered by the ecclesiarchy, the imperial cult, for crimes of heresy and betrayal that are too severe for simple execution, but not so terrible that the condemned is beyond all hope of redemption. This is the key distinction that makes Arco-Flagellation so particularly cruel. It's presented as mercy, as a chance for the heretic to cleanse their sins through suffering and service. The condemned is told that through this punishment, their soul might still be saved, that they might still find peace at the God Emperor's side after death. But the reality is far more terrible than any description of hell. The process begins with the condemned being turned over to the Adeptus Mechanicus, who perform the actual conversion. The heretic is stripped and prepared for extensive surgery that will transform them from a thinking person into a living weapon. The first stage involves replacing both arms with cybernetic weapons. The most common choices are electro-flails, heavy industrial shears, or razor-sharp claws, each designed not for precision, but for maximum damage in close combat. Your arms, The tools you've used your entire life to interact with the world, to embrace loved ones, to create and work, they're cut off and discarded, replaced with instruments of death. But the physical modifications are only the beginning. The Mechanicus grafts a battery of chemical injectors directly onto the spine, complex systems designed to pump a cocktail of combat stimulants directly into your nervous system. These drugs have names like Barrage, Frenzon, Slort, and Spur, and they're designed to transform a normal human into a berserker, capable of feats of violence and endurance that defy natural limitations. The injectors are permanent, impossible to remove without killing you, and they're controlled externally through the pacifier helmet. The helmet itself is perhaps the most cruel aspect of the entire conversion. It's sealed onto your head, connected directly to your cerebrum and spinal cord through brutal, cybernetic interfaces. The helmet serves two functions. When activated, it keeps you in a docile, barely conscious state, your mind filled with sacred imagery, hymns to the Emperor, and religious iconography that loops endlessly. In this mode, you shuffle around when commanded but otherwise remain immobile, lost in a drug-induced religious reverie that prevents any meaningful thought or self-awareness. But the helmet has a second mode, activated by a trigger word from your handler. When that word is spoken, everything changes in an instant. The inhibitors shut off, the combat drug injectors activate, and you're transformed from a barely conscious shell into a screaming engine of destruction. The drugs flood your system, giving you enormous strength and pain tolerance, but at a terrible cost. Your vision is modified so you can see only enemies. Everyone and everything except those tagged as allies by your controller appears as a target. You can't distinguish friend from foe, can't recognize familiar faces, can't exercise any judgment about who you're attacking. The pain of the crude bionic grafts, normally kept at bay by the pacifier helmet, comes crashing down on you all at once, amplified by the combat drugs flowing through your veins. You experience agony that should incapacitate you, but the drugs won't let you stop, won't let you feel anything except rage and pain and the overwhelming compulsion to destroy. You can't control your actions, can't stop yourself from charging at the nearest target, can't do anything except attack and tear and kill until either your targets are destroyed, you're killed yourself, or your handler speaks the deactivation word. And here's the thing that makes this fate so particularly nightmarish. Throughout the process, you remain conscious. Unlike servitors, where the lobotomization destroys most higher brain functions, Arco-Flagellants retain enough awareness to know what's happening to them. When the pacifier helmet is active, you're barely conscious, lost in the religious imagery and unable to think clearly. But some part of you knows that this isn't right, that you're trapped, that you've been transformed into something horrible. When the helmet deactivates and you're thrown into combat, you experience every moment with terrible clarity. You feel the pain of your bionics, the burning of the combat drugs in your veins, the impact of enemy attacks that your body ignores, but your nervous system still registers. You watch through eyes you can't control as your body attacks and destroys, as your weapon arms tear through flesh and bone, as you do violence that part of you recoils from but can't prevent. You're a passenger in your own body, forced to watch as it commits atrocities in the Emperor's name. The combat drugs that sustain you during battle are incredibly damaging to your body. Your heart races at dangerous speeds. Your metabolism burns through resources far faster than normal. Your organs work at levels they were never designed to handle. Each activation of the helmet, each time you're thrown into combat, causes cumulative damage that can never be fully repaired. Your lifespan as an Arco-Flagellant is measured in battles, not years, and each engagement brings you closer to the inevitable moment when your body simply gives out under the strain. And between battles, between those brief periods of drug-fueled violence, you exist in that semi-conscious state where the helmet keeps you docile. You can't interact with the world in any meaningful way, can't communicate your thoughts or feelings, can't do anything except shuffle when commanded and endure the endless loop of religious imagery that fills your drugged mind. You're aware enough to know you're being used as a weapon, to remember the violence you've committed, to experience guilt and horror at what you've become, but not aware enough to do anything about it. Some Arco-Flagellants are used by inquisitors, turned over to the Ordo Hereticus as tools for fighting the enemies of mankind. Others serve with Sisters of Battle, particularly the Order of the Valorous Heart, which views Arco-Flagellants as examples of redemption through suffering. You might be deployed in suicide charges, sent to clear out entrenched enemy positions where your enhanced strength and pain tolerance allow you to absorb fire that would slaughter normal soldiers. You might be used to break sieges, your berserker rage and weapon arms perfect for tearing through fortifications and enemy lines. The Ecclesiarchy presents your fate as redemption, as a chance to earn the Emperor's forgiveness through service and suffering. But there's no way to know if you've succeeded, no moment where someone tells you your sins are forgiven, no peace that comes from having served faithfully. You simply continue to exist in this state, alternating between drug-induced docility and combat drug berserker rage, until your body fails. And when that happens, when your heart finally gives out, or your metabolism can't take any more, or you sustain damage that even the combat drugs can't compensate for, you simply collapse and die, and another heretic is converted to replace you. There are rare accounts of Arco-Flagellants experiencing moments of clarity, brief instants where the drug's clear enough for them to recognize someone they knew before conversion, or to show some flicker of their original personality. These moments are considered malfunctions. When they're reported, the Arco-Flagellant is typically executed and replaced, rather than risk whatever consciousness remains growing stronger. The Imperium doesn't want thinking Arco-Flagellants, doesn't want tools that might question their use or resist their handlers. They want biological weapons, and any sign that the weapon is becoming self-aware again is grounds for destruction. The crimes that lead to Arco-Flagellation vary widely. Some are genuine heretics who spoke against the imperial creed or were found with forbidden texts. Others are guilty of minor heresies, technical violations of church law that normally wouldn't warrant such severe punishment, but happen to be judged by particularly zealous magistrates. Some are entirely innocent, caught up in purges or accused falsely by those who wanted them removed. The Imperium's justice system is neither fair nor particularly careful, and many Arco-Flagellants are paying for crimes they didn't commit, or infractions so minor they barely deserve mention. And the worst part is that this is considered enlightened punishment. The Ecclesiarchy genuinely believes it's offering redemption, that by transforming heretics into weapons that serve the Emperor, it's giving them a chance at salvation they don't deserve. The Mechanicus that performs the conversions sees it as holy work, creating servants who will literally give their bodies in the Emperor's service. The handlers who deploy Arco-Flagellants into battle view them as tools, yes, but tools with sacred purpose, instruments of the Emperor's will. No one considers what it's like for the person trapped inside, for the consciousness that remains aware enough to know what's been done to it, but not aware enough to escape. No one thinks about the horror of being forced to watch as your body commits violence, of being unable to communicate or reason or beg for mercy, of existing in a twilight state between true consciousness and mindless servitude. The Arco-Flagellant is suffering incarnate, a being whose entire existence is defined by pain and violence and the slow degradation of their body under impossible strain. When an Arco-Flagellant finally dies, there's no ceremony, no recognition of their service. Their body is simply disposed of, their weapons harvested for reuse on the next conversion, their remains perhaps rendered down for corpse starch or other practical purposes. The idea that they've earned redemption, that their suffering has cleansed their sins and earned them a place at the Emperor's side, that's just a story the Ecclesiarchy tells to justify the practice. There's no way to know if it's true, no evidence that the souls of Arco-Flagellants are treated any differently than those of any other imperial citizen. And every day, somewhere in the Imperium, another person is sentenced to Arco-Flagellation. Another human being is strapped to an operating table and transformed into a living weapon, their arms replaced with killing implements, their spine invaded by drug injectors, their head sealed into a helmet that will control the rest of their life. And somewhere else, an Arco-Flagellant hears their handler speak the activation word, feels the drugs flood their system and the pain crash over them, and charges mindlessly toward enemies they can't truly see, driven by compulsions they can't resist, aware enough to know what's happening, but powerless to stop it. This is the Imperium's mercy. This is what redemption looks like, and it continues, day after day, world after world, forever. The eternal prison of a demon host. If Arco-Flagellation represents the Imperium's attempt at redemption through suffering, and servitorization represents the stripping away of identity, then demon host binding represents something perhaps even more horrific: the forced sharing of your body with a malevolent entity from the warp. An eternal struggle within your own flesh, between your soul and a being that exists only to cause suffering and corruption. It's a fate that transforms you into a battleground, where every moment of your existence is warfare, and where victory means temporary survival, while defeat means eternal damnation. Demon hosts are created through a deliberate, complex process that requires extensive preparation and forbidden knowledge. Most often, they're created by radical inquisitors, members of the Ordo Malleus, who have decided that fighting chaos requires using its own weapons against it. The logic is seductive in its simplicity. Demons are powerful, and if you can bind one into mortal flesh while keeping it under control, you have a devastating weapon. But the reality is that creating a demon host is heresy of the highest order, punishable by execution if discovered. And the process is so dangerous that many attempts end in disaster. The creation process begins with the selection and preparation of a host body. This has to be a living human, and preferably one with some psychic sensitivity, though not necessarily a full psyker. The host's body needs to be inscribed with specific runes and sigils, marks that will contain and bind the demon once it's summoned. The most important of these is called the Rune of Voiding, which is carved directly into the chest and serves to empty the host body of its original soul, creating space for the demon to be forced in. This stage alone is nightmarish. Imagine being selected as a host, knowing what's about to happen, as ritualists carve arcane symbols into your flesh. They're not gentle, and they don't use anesthesia. The pain is considered part of the binding, a way of making the body receptive to what's coming. And as they carve the Rune of Voiding into your chest, you feel something fundamental being torn away, a sensation of emptiness opening inside you that's unlike any normal pain or loss. Then comes the summoning. Through intricate rituals and the speaking of true names, a demon is called from the warp and forced into your prepared body. This is where most attempted demon host creations fail. If the preparations weren't perfect, if the runes weren't carved correctly, if the ritualists make any mistakes in the binding incantations, the demon breaks free immediately and typically slaughters everyone involved before escaping back into the warp. But when it works, when everything is done correctly, the demon finds itself trapped within mortal flesh, bound by rituals and sigils it cannot break. For you, the host, this moment is indescribable. A presence invades your body, foreign and wrong and hateful beyond anything you've ever imagined. This isn't possession in the way psychers experience it, where the demon takes control. This is forced cohabitation. You're still in your body, still aware and conscious, but now there's something else in there with you. Something that exists in dimensions beyond normal perception. Something that despises everything about you and your existence. The demon is conscious, fully aware, and absolutely furious about its imprisonment. Demons are creatures of the warp, beings of pure energy and emotion that exist in a realm without physical constraints. Being trapped in mortal flesh is like being buried alive for them, a claustrophobic nightmare of limitation and confinement, and they take out their rage on the only target available: you. Every moment of your existence becomes a battleground. The demon tries constantly to take control, to override your will and use your body for its own purposes. You fight back, struggling to maintain autonomy over your own flesh. When you try to move your hand, the demon fights to move it somewhere else. When you try to speak, it attempts to shape your words into blasphemies or dark incantations. Sleep becomes impossible because the demon doesn't need rest and uses those moments when you're vulnerable to push harder against your control. And the daemon talks to you. It knows things, secrets from the warp, truths about reality that mortals aren't meant to understand. It whispers constantly, a litany of temptations and threats and corruptions. It tells you about people you've loved and what really happened to them. It shows you visions of possible futures, almost all of them terrible. It offers bargains. Help it break free, and it will grant you power beyond imagination. Resist, and it will make every moment of your imprisonment as agonizing as possible. The physical sensations are their own hell. Your body changes to accommodate the demon's presence. Your eyes might glow with unnatural light. Your skin might become cold or feverish. You might stop needing food or water in normal ways because the demon sustains itself differently. But these aren't improvements. They're mutations, signs that you're no longer entirely human, that your body is being warped by the presence within it. Your appearance changes in ways that mark you as something unnatural. Silver chains might manifest, growing from your flesh like metal tumors, wrapping around your limbs and torso. These chains aren't decorative, they're part of the binding physical manifestations of the rituals holding the demon in place. They can't be removed without breaking the binding and releasing the demon. Occult brands appear on your skin, marks that burn constantly with cold fire. Your features become distorted, not necessarily monstrous, but wrong, uncanny, as if your face no longer quite fits the underlying bone structure. The demon has powers, abilities that it can sometimes exercise even while bound. These might include unnatural strength, the ability to perceive things beyond normal senses, or even limited psychic capabilities. When these powers are used, when you're deployed as the weapon you were created to be, it's not really you wielding them. The demon is channeling its abilities through your body, and you're just along for the ride, experiencing the sensations secondhand, while the demon does things that should be impossible. Combat as a demon host is particularly nightmarish. Your handler gives the command, and the binding forces you to obey. The demon, eager for violence, cooperates for once, and your body becomes a weapon of terrible power. You might move with speed beyond mortal limits, might attack with strength that can tear armored warriors apart, might manifest brief bursts of warp energy that incinerate enemies. But you're not controlling any of this. You're experiencing it, feeling your body move in ways you never directed, watching through your own eyes as the demon uses your flesh to commit atrocities. And you can't die. The demon, for all its hatred of you, needs your body to remain anchored in the material realm. It keeps you alive through means you can't understand, sustaining biological functions that should have failed, healing wounds that should have killed you. Your consciousness is necessary too. Part of the binding requires your soul to remain present, a kind of anchor that helps contain the demon, so you can't escape into death, can't let go and find peace. You're trapped, sometimes for decades, sometimes for centuries, if your creator is particularly skilled at maintaining the binding. The bindings themselves are never perfect. Over time, they weaken. The demon works constantly to erode them, testing for weaknesses, probing for ways to break free. The longer you exist as a demon host, the more the demon learns about the specific bindings holding it, and the more clever it becomes at subverting them. Small slips occur, moments where the demon gains slightly more control than it should have, where it can move your body in unauthorized ways or speak through your mouth without permission. These moments terrify your handlers, but they're even worse for you because you feel the demon surging forward, feel it stretching against the bindings, and you know that eventually, one of these pushes will succeed. Eventually, the bindings will fail, and when that happens, the demon will take complete control. It might immediately tear through everyone nearby in revenge before fleeing back to the warp, or it might decide to remain in your body and use it to cause as much damage and corruption as possible before the body gives out. And when the bindings do fail, when the demon finally breaks free, or the binding rituals are broken through external intervention, what happens to you? Your consciousness doesn't vanish conveniently. You're still there, still aware, but now completely powerless as the demon operates your body as it wishes. You watch as it uses your hands to kill, as it speaks blasphemies with your voice, as it commits atrocities you're powerless to prevent. And the demon makes sure you feel everything, ensures that you experience every moment of what it's doing, partly as revenge and partly because your suffering feeds it. There are rare cases where demon hosts are subjected to exorcism, where powerful inquisitors and their teams of specialists attempt to forcibly remove the demon from the host body. This process is dangerous for everyone involved. The demon fights to remain, using every trick and power at its disposal. It might possess members of the exorcism team, might destroy the host body rather than allow the exorcism to succeed, or might even succeed in corrupting the exorcists themselves. And even when exorcisms succeed, the host is never the same. Being exorcised leaves scars beyond description. The host survives, yes, but their mind has been warped by the experience of housing a demon. They have knowledge they shouldn't have, awareness of the warp's true nature that most humans are mercifully spared. They remember every moment of their imprisonment, every whisper from the daemon, every atrocity committed with their body. Many exorcised individuals commit suicide shortly after release, unable to live with the memories and the knowledge that they might be vulnerable to future possession. Some inquisitors keep exorcised individuals as acolytes, valuing their unique insights into demonic nature and the warp. These poor souls often become experts on daemonkind, using their traumatic knowledge to help fight chaos, but they're never stable, never entirely trusted, and they live with the constant fear that they might be possessed again. Every time they sleep, they worry that a demon will slip in through the cracks, the first possession left in their psyche. And then there are the demon hosts that persist for centuries, ancient horrors that have been bound and maintained through generations of handlers. These old demon hosts are particularly dangerous because the daemon within has had decades or even centuries to study its bindings, to learn the limitations of its imprisonment, to plot its eventual escape. The host consciousness in these ancient demon hosts is often barely present anymore, ground down by the eternal struggle until only the most stubborn fragments of identity remain, a ghost haunting their own body while the demon grows stronger. Notable demon hosts include creatures like Cherubale, once a demon prince who was bound into mortal form and passed between different inquisitors over the centuries, always dangerous, always plotting, always a hair's breadth away from breaking free. Or Hedrodal, known as the twice-bound demon host, a creature so powerful it required binding twice after the first binding failed. These are legendary horrors, weapons of last resort, and their very existence is proof that some inquisitors have decided that no price is too high in the fight against chaos, not even the price of creating the very things they're supposed to be, fighting. For the host, for the person who was selected or volunteered, or was simply unlucky enough to be chosen, there is no happy ending. Either you remain bound, existing in eternal struggle with the demon inside you, or the demon breaks free, and you become a passenger to atrocities, or you're exorcised and spend the rest of your life traumatized and broken. This is what happens when you become a weapon against chaos. This is the price of trying to fight monsters by becoming one yourself. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, new demon hosts are being created all the time, new souls being condemned to imprisonment within their own flesh, while radical inquisitors tell themselves it's necessary, it's worth it, it's for the greater good. But try telling that to the person screaming silently inside a body they no longer control, sharing their existence with a being that wants nothing more than to make them suffer. The abomination of the Daemonculaba. Some fates in Warhammer 40,000 are so grotesque, so fundamentally wrong, that even among the catalogue of horrors this universe offers, they stand out as uniquely disturbing. The Daemonculaba is one such fate. Created by the Iron Warriors, Chaos Space Marine Legion, after their betrayal during the Horus Heresy, this abomination represents the depths of depravity that chaos corruption can reach, a twisted fusion of biological engineering, slavery, and body horror that transformed human women into living incubators for creating new Chaos Marines. To understand the Daemonculaba, you need to understand the problem it was meant to solve. The Chaos Space Marine Legions, particularly the Iron Warriors led by the demon Primarch Perturabo, needed a way to replenish their numbers. The traditional method of creating Space Marines requires gene seed, genetic material harvested from existing Astartes that can be implanted into suitable young men to begin their transformation. But gene seed is precious, finite, and the traitor legions had lost access to the Imperium's gene forges and facilities. The Iron Warriors, led by the twisted warsmith Honsu, managed to steal uncorrupted gene seed from the Imperial Fist chapter, but they still needed a way to implant this gene seed into new hosts and accelerate their development into full Chaos Marines. Traditional methods took years and required extensive facilities. So the Iron Warriors, with the blessing and gifts of the Chaos Gods, particularly Slaanesh, created something new, a biological process that would transform young boys into Chaos Marines in a matter of months, using human women as the incubators. The women selected for the Daemonculaba were prisoners, captured from raids on Imperial worlds. They were typically young, healthy, and chosen specifically for their childbearing capacity. What happened to them next defies description, but we must confront it to understand the full horror of this fate. Through a combination of warp corruption, mutagenic treatments, and biological manipulation, these women were grotesquely enlarged and mutated. Their bodies were expanded to enormous size, their skin stretched thin, their internal organs rearranged and modified. Their wombs were transformed into chambers capable of housing and transforming young male subjects. But unlike natural pregnancy, this was a conscious, agonizing process where the women remained fully aware of what was being done to them and through them. The young boys who would become new Chaos Marines were forced into these mutated wombs. Not infants, but children or teenagers who were conscious and terrified as they were pushed through an opening in the woman's flesh and sealed inside. Once inside, the transformation process began. The stolen gene seed was implanted, and the womb environment, saturated with warp energy and mutagenic compounds, accelerated the Space Marine creation process in ways that should have been impossible. For the women, this was a waking nightmare that lasted for months. They could feel the subjects moving inside them, could feel the transformation occurring, could sense the corruption and mutation spreading through both their own bodies and the bodies they carried. They were kept alive through the entire process, sustained by tubes and machines and warp energy, their bodies forced to continue functioning even as they were pushed far beyond any natural limit. The pain was indescribable. The mutations alone would have been agonizing, but combined with the unnatural pregnancy and the warp corruption seeping through every cell, the women existed in a state of constant torment. They couldn't speak, their mouths often sealed, or their vocal cords destroyed. but they could scream internally, a constant psychic wail of suffering that the Iron Warriors and their Dark Mechanicus allies simply ignored as irrelevant noise. For the boys inside, the transformation was equally horrific. They were conscious as their bodies were broken down and rebuilt, as their bones grew and their organs were replaced, as the gene seed took hold and transformed them from human into something far removed from humanity. But the process wasn't gentle or gradual, like traditional Space Marine creation. It was violent, rushed, brutal, forcing changes in months that should have taken years. When the transformation was complete, the subject emerged from the Daemonculaba. But this wasn't a clean birth. The subject had to claw and tear their way out through the woman's flesh, fighting their way through meat and membrane to reach the outside world. And when they finally emerged, they were horrifically changed. The successful subjects came out as new Chaos Marines, but they were skinless. Their entire epidermis had been left behind in the womb, and they emerged as raw, bleeding masses of exposed muscle and sinew. The pain was beyond comprehension. Every nerve ending exposed to air, every movement agony. They were immediately taken by the Iron Warriors, apothecaries who would later graft new skin onto them, skin flayed from captured slaves, creating patchwork Marines who wore the literal skin of their victims. But many subjects weren't successful. The transformation process was imperfect, and some emerged as twisted mutants, their bodies warped by the warp corruption and failed genetic integration. These failed products were called unfleshed, and they were cast out, left to wander the depths of the Iron Warrior's fortress, or thrown into fighting pits for amusement. They were conscious and aware enough to know they'd been rejected, deemed failures, but not coherent enough to do anything except rage and suffer. For the women serving as Daemonculaba, there was no relief. Once a subject emerged, another would be forced in. The process continued until the woman's body could no longer sustain it, until the mutations and corruption and constant trauma finally killed them. But even death wasn't guaranteed release, because the Chaos Sorcerers operating the facility sometimes reanimated the corpses, forcing them to continue their function even in death. Zombified incubators that continued the nightmarish process. The psychological horror for these women was total. They were aware throughout, conscious of what they'd become and what they were being used for. They knew they were being used to create enemies of the Imperium, that their bodies were factories producing Chaos Marines who would go on to kill loyal Imperial citizens. They knew that every subject who emerged successfully was one more weapon Chaos could use. But they couldn't resist, couldn't fight back, couldn't do anything except endure. And the Daemonculaba wasn't limited to a single location. The Iron Warriors attempted to spread the technology, to create multiple facilities capable of producing new Chaos Marines. Each facility would require dozens or even hundreds of women, each one transformed into a living incubator, each one suffering this fate for as long as their bodies could sustain it. The fate of those who survived long enough to be retired from service was no better. The mutations were permanent, their bodies irreversibly changed. They were no longer recognizably human, more like fleshy sacks with vestigial limbs, their humanity stripped away by the transformations. Most were simply killed when they could no longer serve their function, though some were kept as curiosities or used for other experimental purposes by the Iron Warriors' twisted warpsmiths. The Daemonculaba project was eventually destroyed by Ultramarines Captain Uriel Ventris during an assault on the Iron Warriors' fortress. The women serving as Daemonculaba were killed during the battle, whether by Imperial weapons or by the Iron Warriors destroying evidence, and the facility was purged with fire and orbital bombardment. But the knowledge of how to create them survived, recorded in the twisted archives of the Chaos Legions, a technique that could theoretically be replicated if another warband captured gene seed and needed a way to rapidly create new Marines. The horror of the Daemonculaba lies not just in the physical transformations or the pain inflicted, but in the complete dehumanization it represents. These women were reduced to biological machinery, their bodies converted into factories, their suffering deemed irrelevant as long as the process produced results. They were conscious throughout, aware of their degradation, unable to resist or escape, forced to participate in the creation of monsters that would spread more suffering across the galaxy. It's a fate that combines the worst aspects of several other fates we've discussed: the body modification and loss of agency, similar to servitors, the prolonged suffering and consciousness of Dark Eldar captivity, the corruption and mutation of chaos transformation. But it's worse than any individual element, because it's all of these combined with the specific horror of being forced to create new horrors, of knowing your suffering is actively producing more suffering. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the Daemonculaba stands as evidence that there are always new depths to which chaos can sink, new ways to inflict suffering that no one had previously imagined. And somewhere in the Eye of Terror, or in the warp storms that plague real space, Iron Warriors sorcerers might be planning to recreate the process, looking for new sources of gene seed and new victims to transform into living incubators. Because in chaos, innovation never sleeps, and the pursuit of power recognizes no moral boundaries whatsoever. Consumed by the Tyranid swarm if the previous fates we've discussed involve prolonged suffering, transformation, or imprisonment within your own body, being consumed by the Tyranids represents something different, but no less horrific: the absolute obliteration of your existence and everything you've ever known, reduced to raw biological data and absorbed into a hunger so vast it crosses galaxies. The Tyranids don't torture for pleasure, don't corrupt for the glory of dark gods, don't transform you into weapons. They simply consume, efficiently and completely. And what makes this fate so terrible is the knowledge that your death serves to make them stronger, that your biomass will be used to create more Tyranids who will consume more worlds. The Tyranids are an extragalactic threat, a species or collective of species driven by a single overriding imperative: consume and adapt. They exist as hive fleets, massive bioships that travel through the void of space, guided by a psychic gestalt consciousness called the hive mind. When a hive fleet identifies a world with sufficient biomass, it begins the invasion process, and that world's doom is all but certain. The invasion follows a predictable pattern. First come the vanguard organisms, genestealers that infiltrate the population years or even decades before the fleet arrives, and lictors, specialized infiltrator organisms that land secretly and begin gathering biological data. The genestealers are particularly insidious. They infect the population, implanting genetic material that corrupts over generations, eventually creating genestealer cults. These cults worship the Tyranids as gods, believing they're bringing salvation when they're actually preparing the world for consumption. When the hive fleet arrives in orbit, the real nightmare begins. The sky fills with living ships, massive organisms that dwarf anything built by mortal hands. Spores begin raining down, billions upon billions of them, seeding the atmosphere with mutagenic organisms that begin transforming the very air you breathe. The planet's ecosystem starts changing within days as the spores interact with native plant life, accelerating growth while introducing horrific mutations. Then come the waves of assault organisms, hormigants and termagants, small but deadly creatures that swarm across the battlefield in numbers that defy comprehension. Larger creatures follow, warriors that coordinate the swarms, carnifexes that serve as living tanks, hive tyrants that direct entire sections of the assault. And behind them all, the feeder organisms begin their work. Being on a world during a Tyranid invasion is a unique horror. You can't negotiate with Tyranids, can't surrender or make peace. They don't take prisoners, don't occupy territory, don't have any goal except consumption. Every defensive line you establish, they eventually overwhelm through sheer numbers. every victory you achieve is temporary because they simply create more organisms and attack again. And all around you, the world itself is changing, becoming more hostile, more alien, as the Tyranid corruption spreads. If you're unlucky enough to be captured alive by certain Tyranid organisms, the consumption process can be drawn out. Some Tyranids don't kill their prey immediately, but drag them back toward the reclamation pools, keeping them alive for the journey. You're conscious as you're hauled across a landscape that's increasingly unrecognizable, watching the sky darken with spores, seeing plant life twisted into new forms, hearing the constant chittering and screeching of the swarm. The feeder organisms are perhaps the most disturbing part of the invasion. Rippers, maggot-like creatures with gaping maws full of teeth, swarm over the battlefield once the fighting moves on. They're small individually, but they appear in millions, and they consume everything organic. Living or dead, it doesn't matter. If you're wounded and can't move, if you're hiding, hoping to escape notice, the Rippers will find you. They'll swarm over you, their teeth tearing into flesh, and they'll begin feeding while you're still alive. The Rippers don't kill quickly unless they're in particularly large numbers. They bite and tear, consuming chunks of flesh, and they secrete chemicals that keep you from losing consciousness from blood loss or shock you. Remain aware as they eat, feeling every bite, watching as your own body is devoured piece by piece. And when they've eaten all they can, when they're bloated with consumed biomass, they drag themselves toward the nearest reclamation pool. The reclamation pools are the true horror of Tyranid consumption. These are massive biological structures, vast pools filled with digestive enzymes so potent they can break down any organic matter into its component molecules. The pools appear wherever the Tyranids have consolidated their control, surrounded by capillary towers, massive plant-like structures that will eventually pump the dissolved biomass up to the hive ships in orbit. If you're brought to a reclamation pool alive, your fate is sealed. The Tyranids don't waste time or effort killing you first. You're simply thrown in, along with everything else they've gathered. The digestive enzymes begin working immediately, starting to break down your flesh at the molecular level. The pain is indescribable. Every nerve ending in your body screaming as the enzymes dissolve your skin, penetrate deeper tissues, begin breaking apart your organs. You don't lose consciousness immediately. The process takes time, and your brain remains functional until the enzymes reach it, or until you finally expire from the combination of chemical burns, tissue destruction, and systemic failure. You might have minutes of consciousness, experiencing the most intense pain imaginable, unable to escape because the pool is deep and surrounded by Tyranid organisms that prevent any escape attempts. And as you dissolve, as your body is broken down into amino acids, carbohydrates, fatty acids, and other molecular building blocks, you know that everything you were is being turned into resources for the swarm. Your strength will become the strength of new Tyranid organisms. Your genetic material will be analyzed and possibly incorporated into future creatures. Even your memories, the neural patterns in your brain, might be absorbed and processed by the hive mind, adding your knowledge and experiences to its vast collective consciousness. The Rippers that fed on you, bloated with biomass, throw themselves into the pools as well. They're not individuals in any meaningful sense, just specialized feeding tools, and once they've served their purpose, they willingly end their existence, becoming part of the biomass slurry they helped create. It's the ultimate in efficiency. Even the tools used for consumption are themselves consumed. As the invasion progresses, the reclamation pools grow larger and more numerous. Entire valleys might become digestion zones, filled with pools of churning biological soup. The capillary towers grow taller, reaching up through the atmosphere towards space. The planet's oceans begin to be absorbed, drained through specialized feeding organisms. Even the air starts thinning as atmospheric processes extract useful gases. For those who survive the initial invasion and hide, hoping to outlast the Tyranids or waiting for rescue, the horror deepens as they watch their world die. The plants die, or transform into alien growths. Animals disappear, consumed or fled underground, or into places too remote to matter. The sky changes color as the atmosphere is altered. The very ground becomes unstable as burrowing Tyranids hollow out the planet's crust, consuming fungal networks and root systems and any subterranean life. Genestealer cultists face a particularly tragic fate. They worship the Tyranids, believe they're heralding gods who will transform them and elevate them to a new existence. As the invasion progresses, the cultists celebrate, thinking they're witnessing salvation. But the Tyranids make no distinction between cultists and anyone else. When the feeder organisms arrive, the cultists are consumed like everyone else, often still praising the swarm even as they're being eaten. Their betrayal was complete, but they receive no special treatment, no mercy. They're just more biomass to be collected. The final stages of planetary consumption are almost peaceful in their inevitability. Once all resistance is broken, once every living thing has been hunted down and consumed, the reclamation pools do their work. The capillary towers, now stretching from the depths of the former oceans up through the thinning atmosphere, begin pumping the biomass slurry into orbit. Massive bioships descend to connect with the towers, extended proboscis-like feeding tubes that draw up the dissolved biomass in tremendous quantities. The process continues until the planet is completely stripped. Every ocean drained, every forest consumed, every animal digested, even the microorganisms in the soil are harvested. What's left is a barren rock, stripped down to bedrock, devoid of all organic matter, its atmosphere thin or non-existent. A dead world, one of thousands the Tyranids have consumed, and soon to be forgotten as the hive fleet moves on to the next meal. For the individuals who experience consumption, there's no afterlife, no emperor's peace, no salvation. Their biological material becomes part of the swarm, their genetic information potentially incorporated into new Tyranid organisms, but their consciousness, their souls, if such things even matter to the Tyranids, are simply gone. The Tyranids don't feed on suffering like the Dark Eldar, or souls like the Chaos Gods. They feed on biomass, and once you're dissolved in a reclamation pool, you've served your purpose. What makes the Tyranid fate so terrifying isn't just the physical horror of being eaten alive or dissolved in acid. It's the absolute nature of it, the knowledge that you're being erased completely, and that your erasure makes the threat stronger. Every world the Tyranids consume gives them resources to create more organisms, to grow the hive fleet, to threaten more worlds. Your death directly contributes to the deaths of countless others, and there's nothing you can do to prevent. Totor and the Tyranids are still coming. Multiple hive fleets have entered the galaxy, each one massive beyond comprehension, and they show no signs of stopping. Billions have already been consumed, entire civilizations wiped out, hundreds of worlds stripped bare. The Imperium fights desperately to stop them, but every victory is costly, and the Tyranids learn from every engagement, adapting their organisms to counter Imperial tactics. Somewhere, right now, a world is experiencing the early stages of Tyranid invasion. People are looking up at the sky, seeing the first spore clouds descending, watching the horizon darken with approaching swarms. And somewhere else, the last survivors on a doomed world are watching the capillary towers, pumping away their planet's life, knowing they're next, waiting for the Rippers to find them or the Defenders to fail completely, after which they'll simply become more biological material for the endless hunger of the hive mind. Other nightmarish fates. While we've explored some of the most well-documented and uniquely horrific destinies that await those unfortunate enough to draw the attention of the galaxy's most malevolent forces, the 41st Millennium offers a virtually limitless catalogue of suffering that we couldn't possibly cover in exhaustive detail. But there are several other fates worth mentioning, each representing its own particular flavour of horror, each a reminder that in Warhammer 40k's universe, there's always something worse waiting to be discovered. Let's talk about the daily sacrifice of psykers to sustain the God Emperor. 1,000 psykers each day are brought to the Golden Throne on Terra, where their souls and life force are consumed to keep the Astronomicon burning, the psychic beacon that allows warp travel throughout the Imperium. These aren't volunteers in any meaningful sense. They're rounded up from across the Imperium by the Black Ships, terrified individuals who've been identified as having psychic potential. Many of these psykers are barely trained, often little more than children or young adults who've shown the slightest hint of warp sensitivity. They're herded onto the Black Ships, packed into holding cells, and told they're going to serve the Emperor. What they're not told is that this service will last exactly 1 moment, the instant their life force is drained away to feed the Emperor's withering form. They walk into the chamber in groups, and in seconds, they're reduced to desiccated husks, their souls consumed entirely. The process is instantaneous, but imagine the moments before, standing in line with hundreds of others, watching those ahead of you walk forward and simply collapse, knowing you're next, unable to flee or resist. Your entire existence, whatever potential you might have had, is reduced to fuel, a brief flicker of energy added to the bonfire that keeps the Imperium functioning. And this happens 1,000 times every single day, 365,000 souls annually for over 10,000 years. It's a holocaust of psychic potential, necessary perhaps for the Imperium's survival, but no less horrible for its necessity. Then there's the fate of those who experience Geller field failure during warp travel. When a ship's Geller field malfunctions while in the warp, the barriers between real space and the immaterium collapse. The ship and everyone on it are suddenly exposed to the raw stuff of chaos, and reality itself begins to break down. Time becomes fluid, flowing backward and forward simultaneously. Space warps in impossible geometries, where corridors fold into themselves and rooms exist in multiple places at once. For the crew and passengers, this is hell made manifest. Their bodies begin mutating uncontrollably as warp energy flows through them. Some transform into spawn-like creatures. Others have their forms twisted into impossible shapes, still alive and conscious, but no longer able to move or communicate. The ship itself often becomes corrupted, its walls weeping blood or growing eyes or developing a rudimentary consciousness that's utterly malevolent. Demons manifest freely in this environment, no longer constrained by the need for rituals or possession. They appear in the corridors and feast on the crew, not just killing them, but torturing them in ways that violate every law of physics and biology. The survivors, if any remain, go completely mad within minutes, their minds unable to process what they're experiencing. Some ships that suffer Geller field failure are recovered centuries or even millennia later, emerging from the warp filled with mutated monstrosities that were once human, or haunted by echoes of the crew's deaths that play out endlessly in psychic loops. Nurgle's rot deserves special mention as one of the most insidious diseases in the galaxy. This supernatural plague, created by the plague god himself, doesn't just kill, it transforms. When you contract Nurgle's rot, your body begins to bloat and decay while you're still alive. Your flesh turns soft and begins to slough off. Boils and lesions appear across your skin. Your organs begin to fail, but the disease keeps you alive, keeps you conscious, so you experience every stage of your decomposition. The worst part is what happens after death. When Nurgle's rot finally kills you, your soul doesn't go to whatever afterlife awaits Imperial citizens. Instead, you're reborn in Nurgle's garden in the warp as a plague bearer, a lesser demon that serves the plague god for eternity. You're conscious throughout this transformation, aware that you've lost your mortality and your humanity, that you're now a servant of the very power that killed you. And in Nurgle's garden, time flows strangely, so your existence as a plague bearer might last for subjective millennia, cataloguing diseases and plagues for your jovial but utterly corrupt master. Speaking of specific individuals, let's consider the fate of Epimetheus, a grey knight, who earned particular attention from the Iron Warriors. After his capture, Epimetheus was subjected to tortures that pushed the boundaries of what even Chaos Space Marines typically inflict. His eyes and mouth were sewn shut with demon tendons, his tongue and hands were amputated. His black carapace, the organ that allows Space Marines to interface with power armor, was surgically removed, making him unable to ever wear armor again. His progenoid glands, vital for creating new Space Marines, were extracted and given to the twisted geneticist Fabius Bile. But the cruelest touch was having a blank, a psychic null, surgically attached to his body. Blanks naturally suppress psychic power in their vicinity, and for a Grey Knight, whose abilities are fundamentally psychic, this is a torture beyond physical pain. Epimetheus can sense the warp, can feel his powers, but can't access them. He's blind, mute, crippled, and stripped of the abilities that defined his existence, kept alive indefinitely by his enhanced physiology, but completely helpless. Even if rescued, there's virtually no chance he could ever fight again, and the psychological trauma alone would be devastating beyond measure. The creation of pain engines and grotesques by homunculi deserves further elaboration. When Dark Eldar homunculi create these constructs, they often leave fragments of consciousness intact in the victims whose bodies are used. A grotesque might be formed from dozens of individuals, their bodies fused together into a massive combat construct. But pieces of those original minds remain aware, trapped in shared flesh they can't control, experiencing every moment of the grotesque's existence as prisoners in a biological war machine. Pain engines are even worse because they're designed specifically to experience and generate suffering. The consciousness wired into a Talos or Kronos doesn't just experience pain, it processes pain, amplifies it, becomes a kind of living agony amplifier. When these constructs attack enemies, the consciousness within experiences a form of sympathetic pain, feeling echoes of every wound inflicted. They exist in a perpetual state of torment that feeds the Dark Eldar who use them while simultaneously serving as weapons. There are also the coffin detail workers, those unfortunate souls assigned to change the highly radioactive fuel cores of certain ship types. These individuals, whether servitors or prison laborers, must physically carry containers so radioactive that lethal doses are absorbed within seconds. The procession is slow, the distance substantial, and death is not instant. Instead, the carriers experience acute radiation poisoning, their cells breaking down, their tissues literally melting as they continue carrying the fuel core because they've been programmed or forced to complete the task regardless of the cost. The last few members of the procession often have to step over the liquefied remains of those who went before them, knowing they're next, that in moments they too will be reduced to irradiated sludge, their sacrifice necessary for the ship's function, but ultimately meaningless, just another drop in the ocean of suffering that keeps the Imperium running. Let's not forget the fate of those transformed by chaos artifacts or weapons. Some warp-tainted items don't just kill or corrupt, they transform their victims in specific, targeted ways. There are chaos swords that turn those they cut into undead servants, conscious but unable to control their bodies as they're forced to attack their former friends. There are helmets that, when worn, bond permanently to the skull and begin slowly overwriting the wearer's personality with that of a long-dead chaos warrior. The ruinous powers have had millennia to devise countless variations on transformation and suffering, and new horrors are being created constantly. Somewhere in the Eye of Terror, a dark Mechanicus warsmith is probably developing new forms of servitor that combine the worst aspects of lobotomization with demonic possession. Somewhere else, a Slaneshi sorcerer is perfecting a ritual that traps souls in art pieces, forcing them to experience whatever emotion the art depicts for eternity. The innovation of chaos never stops, because suffering is both means and end for the dark gods. And then there are the fates that result from simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Worlds that get caught in warp storms and experience thousands of years of isolation in real space, while only days pass outside, emerging millennia later to find everything they knew gone. Populations that experience demonic incursions and survive, but are so tainted by their exposure that the Inquisition orders them all executed as precautionary measures. Individuals who witness things they shouldn't have seen and are memory wiped or lobotomized to prevent them from spreading dangerous knowledge. The Imperium itself, in its drive to maintain control and security, inflicts fates that rival anything chaos offers. Penal legions are filled with individuals sentenced to fight in suicide missions until they're killed. A slow death sentence served on battlefields too dangerous for regular guard units. Hive cities trap billions in conditions of grinding poverty and pollution so severe that most inhabitants never see natural sunlight in their entire lives. The Mechanicus conducts experiments on unwilling subjects, testing new technologies or weapons without any regard for consent or suffering. And underlying all of this is the simple truth that for most Imperial citizens, life itself is a fate barely better than these explicitly nightmarish destinies. Working 16-hour days in toxic factories, eating corpse starch made from rendered human remains, living in cramped hab blocks where violence and disease are constant threats, never knowing if the world will face orc invasion or chaos corruption or Tyranid consumption or simple imperial taxation that demands every able-bodied person be shipped off to die in wars on distant worlds they'll never see. In the grim darkness of the far future, horror is not exceptional. It's the baseline. The fates we've discussed are merely the peaks of a mountain range of suffering that extends endlessly in every direction. And every day, every hour, every moment, somewhere in the galaxy, someone is experiencing one of these fates or discovering a new one. Because in the 41st millennium, there is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. The philosophy of suffering in Warhammer 40k. As we come to the end of this exploration of the worst fates in Warhammer 40k, it's worth stepping back and asking, why? Why does this universe contain such elaborate, extensive, seemingly endless variations on suffering? What purpose does it serve in the narrative, and what does it say about the setting as a whole? Warhammer 40k is fundamentally a grimdark setting, a term that literally comes from the game's tagline. It's a universe designed from the ground up to be as bleak, dark, and hopeless as possible, while still maintaining enough heroism and nobility to make the struggle meaningful. The suffering we've examined isn't gratuitous or added for shock value. It's intrinsic to what the setting is trying to convey about war, faith, survival, and the price of civilization. The Imperium of Man is presented as humanity's best hope for survival, but it's also a fascist theocracy that grinds up billions of lives to maintain its existence. It's meant to be uncomfortable, to force us to confront questions about what compromises are acceptable in the name of survival, about whether the cost of continuing can ever become too high. The worst fates we've discussed, particularly those inflicted by the Imperium itself, servitorization, Arco-Flagellation, the daily psyker sacrifice, are commentary on this tension. When the Imperium turns people into servitors, it's making a statement about how it values human life, as raw material, as tools, as resources to be exploited. When it creates Arco-Flagellants, it's showing how religious zealotry can transform even punishment into something monstrous. When it feeds psykers to the Emperor by the thousand, it's demonstrating that the Imperium will sacrifice anything, any number of individuals, to keep itself functioning. These aren't bugs in the Imperial system. They're features, intended parts of a machine designed to survive in the most hostile environment imaginable. The chaos-inflicted fates, meanwhile, represent corruption and the dangers of seeking power without wisdom or restraint. Chaos. Spawns show what happens when you grasp for more than you can handle. when ambition outpaces ability. Daemonhosts demonstrate the perils of trying to use evil for good purposes, of believing you can control forces beyond your comprehension. The mutations and transformations that chaos inflicts are physical, manifestations of spiritual corruption, the body reflecting what's happened to the soul. The Drukhari fates represent sadism, elevated to survival mechanism, showing how a civilization can rationalize any atrocity if it's necessary for their continued existence. They're dark mirrors of the Imperium, another society that's decided survival justifies any cost, but they've removed even the pretense of nobility or higher purpose. They cause suffering because they must, but they've also learned to enjoy it, and that combination makes them perhaps the most disturbing faction in terms of the fates they inflict. The Tyranids are different, representing an existential threat that can't be reasoned with, bargained with, or understood. The fates they inflict aren't personal, aren't intended to cause suffering, but are simply the inevitable result of being consumed by a force that sees all organic matter as food. In a way, the Tyranid fate is the most honest. There's no pretense of justice or redemption or purpose beyond feeding the swarm. Your food, nothing more, and your significance ends the moment you're digested. These worst fates also serve a narrative function within the setting. They're what gives weight to victory and stakes to conflict. When Space Marines fight to defend a world from chaos invasion, they're not just fighting to prevent military defeat, they're fighting to prevent everyone on that world from potentially suffering fates worse than death. When Inquisitors hunt down Genestealer cults, they're trying to stop entire planets from being fed to the Tyranids. The grimness of potential defeat makes even small victories meaningful. There's also something to be said about how these fates inform character development and moral complexity. In a setting where the alternative to harsh imperial rule might be transformation into a chaos spawn, or consumption by Tyranids, suddenly the Imperium's brutal methods become more understandable, if not entirely justified. It creates a moral grey area where there are no good options, only choices between varying degrees of horror. The extensive catalogue of terrible fates also serves to make death seem like mercy, which fundamentally alters how we view violence in the setting. When a Space Marine executes a cultist, rather than let them be taken for Arco-Flagellation, it's an act of kindness. When a Commissar orders a mercy killing of soldiers who are being dragged away by Dark Eldar raiders, it's the compassionate choice. Death becomes not an enemy, but a release, and sometimes the only form of mercy available. For readers and players, these fates serve as horror elements that add depth and weight to the setting. They're the darkness that makes the small lights of heroism stand out. When a character makes a noble sacrifice, when a unit holds a line knowing they'll all die, when someone chooses defiance over submission, these acts gain significance because we understand what the alternatives might be. Hope becomes precious specifically because it's so rare and so often proven false. But there's also a warning in these fates, a cautionary tale about what happens when societies abandon human dignity in pursuit of other goals. The Imperium's worst practices, its servitors and penal legions and casual sacrifice of billions, aren't presented as good things. They're shown as necessary evils in a universe that's become so hostile that survival itself requires monstrous choices. And that raises the question, at what point does survival stop being worth the price? When do you become the very thing you're fighting against? The Chaos factions answer that question by showing what happens when you fully embrace that darkness. They've stopped even pretending to care about the cost, stopped trying to justify their actions, and simply indulge in cruelty and corruption for its own sake. They're what the Imperium might become if it ever abandoned the last vestiges of its humanity, if it embraced the dark pragmatism at its core and stopped being conflicted about it. In our own world, we face questions about what we're willing to sacrifice for security, about how much suffering is acceptable in pursuit of greater goods, about whether the ends ever truly justify the means. Warhammer 40k takes these questions and amplifies them to absurd extremes, creating a universe where the stakes are so high and the threats so existential that almost any sacrifice seems potentially justifiable. And then it shows us the results of that thinking, the worst fates that await those who become resources, tools, or obstacles in the great machine of Imperial survival. The worst fates in Warhammer 40k are ultimately a reflection of the setting's core philosophy, that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, no respite, no hope of better days ahead. There is only war, only survival, only the endless grinding struggle to continue existing in a universe that's fundamentally hostile to human life. And in that struggle, individuals become expendable. Their suffering becomes necessary, and their fates become warnings about what happens when you lose, when you fall, when you attract the wrong attention from forces far more powerful than yourself. But even in this darkness, there are moments of genuine heroism, of individuals who choose to make stands knowing they'll lose, of sacrifice that means something even in a meaningless universe. The worst fates give weight to these moments, make them matter, because we understand exactly what these people are fighting against and what they're trying to prevent. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate purpose of cataloguing these horrors. Not to revel in darkness for its own sake, but to understand what it truly costs to hold the line against the night, to appreciate the courage required to face down threats that promise fates worse than any death, and to recognize that sometimes the real heroes aren't the ones who win impossible victories, but the ones who keep fighting knowing that defeat means more than just dying. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, but there's also duty, loyalty, and the stubborn human refusal to surrender even when surrender would be the rational choice. And maybe that's the real message, hidden beneath all the horror, that humanity's true strength isn't its weapons or its warriors or its empire, but its capacity to endure, to continue fighting, to face the worst fates imaginable, and still find reasons to resist. Because in a universe this dark, that kind of defiance, however futile it might ultimately be, is its own form of light. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the darkest corners of the 41st millennium, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There's always more lore to explore, more stories to tell, and more corners of this vast, terrifying universe to illuminate. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the best we can hope for is to face it with our humanity intact, for